1. The inner landscape of solitude. In a world that glorifies motion, noise, and visibility, there exists a man who chooses the quiet path. He doesn't seek validation through social gatherings or public displays. Instead, he finds meaning in the stillness of his own space. This man is often misunderstood, labeled as antisocial, withdrawn, or emotionally distant. But these labels miss the mark. His solitude is not a symptom of fear or failure. It is a conscious choice, a declaration of independence from the chaos of modern life. His room is not a prison, but a sanctuary. Every object, every corner, every shadow reflects his inner world. The way he arranges his books, the light that filters through his curtains, the quiet hum of his kettle. These are not mundane details. They are expressions of his psyche, manifestations of his emotional architecture. He wakes to silence, not as an absence, but as a presence. The stillness of morning is his symphony. The scent of coffee, the soft creak of the floorboards, the way sunlight dances across his desk. These are the rhythms of peace. While others chase excitement, he cultivates depth. He doesn't fear being alone because he has befriended his mind. In solitude, he meets himself, his fears, his dreams, his contradictions. And instead of running from them, he listens. This is not escapism. It's arrival. He is not avoiding life. He is living it on his own terms. His home is a mirror, reflecting not what the world expects, but who he truly is. In a culture that equates busyness with worth, his stillness is a quiet rebellion. He reminds us that presence is more powerful than performance, and that peace does not require witnesses. 2. The energy economy of introverted men. Introverted men experience the world differently. Their energy doesn't come from external stimulation. It comes from within. Loud conversations, crowded rooms, and constant engagement don't fuel them. They drain them. Every interaction, no matter how small, costs a piece of mental currency. And when that currency runs low, they retreat, not out of weakness, but out of necessity. Home becomes the place where that energy is restored. It's not just a physical space. It's a psychological recharge station. Carl Jung, who first popularized the concept of introversion, described introverts as people who turn their libido inward. Their life force doesn't seek chaos. It seeks reflection. This inward focus is not a flaw. It's a strength. The man who loves staying home is not antisocial. He's selective. He understands that not all connections are nourishing. He prefers depth over breadth, meaning over motion. While society celebrates the man who moves constantly, chasing deals, parties, and approval, the quiet man moves within. His progress is invisible but profound. He builds emotional resilience, clarity, and self-awareness. His solitude is not empty. It's full of thought, creativity, and introspection. He doesn't need the noise of others to validate his existence. He finds dialogue in silence. His thoughts, his music, his books, they speak to him in quiet harmony. This energy economy is not about isolation. It's about conservation. He knows how to protect his emotional resources, how to invest them wisely, and how to recharge without external dependence. In a world that demands constant output, his ability to retreat and restore is a form of emotional intelligence. It's not just survival, it's mastery. 3. The sanctuary of control. For the man who chooses solitude, his home is not just a shelter. It's a sovereign realm. In a world that often feels chaotic, unpredictable, and performative, his personal space becomes a sanctuary of control. Every object in his room carries intention. The placement of his desk, the way his books are arranged, the lighting he chooses, these are not random decisions. They are expressions of emotional regulation. Psychologists refer to this as environmental mastery, the ability to shape one's surroundings to reflect and support one's inner state. For this man, control is not about dominance or rigidity. It's about grounding. When the outside world feels overwhelming, his room becomes a stabilizing force. The order he creates is therapeutic, not obsessive. It's a way to restore equilibrium, to anchor his emotions, and to reclaim agency over his experience. His rituals, brewing coffee at the same time each morning, listening to a specific playlist while working, tidying his space before bed, are not mere habits. They are acts of self-care, woven into the architecture of his day. These routines offer predictability in a world that constantly demands adaptation. They allow him to regulate his mood, manage stress, and maintain clarity. To outsiders, this might look like withdrawal or even eccentricity. But to him, it's a form of emotional intelligence. He understands that the environment we inhabit shapes our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. By curating his space with intention, he creates a psychological buffer against the noise of the world. His room becomes a mirror of his mind, calm, deliberate, and composed. In this sanctuary, he doesn't have to perform. He simply exists, and that existence, free from external pressure, is profoundly healing. 4. The myth of the lonely man. One of the most persistent misconceptions about men who enjoy solitude is the assumption that they are lonely. But loneliness and solitude are not the same. Loneliness is a feeling of absence, a yearning for connection that isn't fulfilled. Solitude, on the other hand, is a state of presence, a fullness that comes from being deeply connected to oneself. The man who chooses to stay home is not avoiding people. He's choosing peace. His solitude is not a void. It's a vessel. It holds his thoughts, his creativity, his emotional depth. He doesn't need constant interaction to feel alive. He finds richness in quiet moments, in the pages of a book, in the rhythm of his routines, in the silence that allows his mind to breathe. This man experiences solitude as abundance. He is not dependent on external validation to define his worth. He doesn't measure his life by how many people he sees or how many events he attends. Instead, he measures it by the quality of his inner dialogue. He reflects, he dreams, he processes. He confronts his fears, revisits his memories, and explores his desires, all within the safe confines of his own space. This kind of introspection is rare in a world that encourages distraction. Most people drown out their inner voices with noise, but he listens, and in that listening he finds clarity. His solitude is not a symptom of emotional deficiency. It's a sign of emotional maturity. He knows how to be alone without being lonely. He knows how to find connection within himself. And that self-connection is the foundation of true strength. 5. The rebellion against noise. We live in a culture that equates activity with meaning. The more you do, the more you're seen as successful. Social media amplifies this illusion, broadcasting lives filled with movement, interaction, and spectacle. In this environment, silence becomes suspicious. When someone says, "I just want to stay home," it's often interpreted as a sign of depression, fear, or failure. But what if it's the opposite? What if choosing stillness is an act of rebellion? The man who stays home is not disengaged. He's defying the expectation that life must be loud to be valid. His quiet is not emptiness. It's intention. He pays attention to details others overlook. The sound of rain, the way light shifts through the blinds, the texture of morning air. This sensitivity is not fragility. It's awareness. And awareness is a form of intelligence that cannot be faked. His rebellion is subtle but powerful. He refuses to be swept up in the current of constant stimulation. He doesn't chase dopamine hits from likes, comments, or applause. He finds satisfaction in subtler rewards, focus, peace, depth. His attention is sacred. He doesn't scatter it across 1,000 distractions. He concentrates it on what matters. This kind of rebellion is rare. It requires courage to step out of the stream and stand still. It requires strength to resist the pressure to perform. And it requires wisdom to know that silence is not a void, but a vessel. The man who stays home is not resisting people. He's resisting pressure. He's reclaiming his time, his energy, and his mind. In a world addicted to noise, his stillness is revolutionary. 6. The emotional architecture of home. To the man who thrives in solitude, home is not just a place to sleep or store belongings. It's a living extension of his psyche. Every object, every texture, every corner reflects a part of his inner world. The chair he always sits in, the mug he uses each morning, the way he arranges his books, these are not random choices. They are symbols of identity, emotional anchors that ground him in familiarity and meaning. Psychologists call this territoriality, the human need to personalize space as a reflection of self. For this man, his room is sacred territory. It's not about ownership. It's about belonging. It's the one place where he doesn't have to perform, where his energy isn't drained by social expectations, and where his thoughts can roam freely. The living room becomes a reflection of his mental state, organized but not sterile, personal but private. The bedroom transforms into a temple of retreat, a space for dreaming, resting, and re-entering the world on his own terms. The kitchen, often overlooked, becomes a site of nourishment, not just physical, but emotional. Even the lighting matters. He chooses warm tones that soothe rather than stimulate. He positions his desk where natural light falls gently across his workspace, creating an atmosphere of calm focus. These design choices are not aesthetic indulgences. They are acts of emotional regulation. His home is a system, a carefully curated environment that supports his psychological needs. It's where he feels safe enough to be vulnerable, creative, and authentic. In a world that demands constant adaptation, his home offers consistency. It's the stage where his truest self performs not for others, but for his own growth. 7. Masculinity reimagined, strength in stillness. Traditional masculinity has long been associated with dominance, visibility, and conquest. Men are expected to be loud, assertive, constantly producing, constantly proving. But the man who chooses solitude challenges this narrative. His strength is not in how much noise he makes, but in how much control he exercises over his emotions, his time, his attention. He doesn't need to dominate others to feel powerful. He doesn't need applause to feel worthy. His masculinity is rooted in restraint, discipline, and emotional intelligence. He knows how to sit with discomfort without reacting. He knows how to regulate his mood without suppressing it. He knows how to be alone without feeling incomplete. This quiet strength is often misunderstood. People mistake his calm for coldness, his silence for weakness. But in reality, it takes immense courage to choose peace in a world addicted to chaos. He is not passive. He is deliberate. His decisions are thoughtful, his actions intentional. He doesn't chase validation because he already knows his worth. His home becomes his dojo, not of combat, but of composure. It's where he trains his mind, refines his philosophy, and cultivates emotional resilience. He embodies a new kind of masculinity, one that values presence over performance, depth over dominance, and authenticity over approval. This redefinition is not just personal. It's cultural. It signals a shift from proving one's value to knowing it. And in that knowing, he becomes a quiet force, steady, grounded, and unshakable. 8. Healing through solitude. For many men who prefer solitude, the choice to stay home is not born from avoidance. It's born from experience. They've been hurt by the world outside. Rejection, betrayal, burnout. These wounds don't heal in the spotlight. They heal in silence. The home becomes a cocoon, a space where emotional injuries can close without interference. Psychologists refer to this as self-soothing, the ability to comfort oneself without relying on external reassurance. This man doesn't seek constant validation. He seeks restoration. He learns to create safety from within, to nurture himself through routine, reflection, and quiet presence. Over time, this self-reliance transforms into serenity. His solitude becomes a garden, not a prison. And in that garden, growth happens, slow, invisible, but real. He doesn't drown his pain in distraction. He faces it. He sits with his sadness, his confusion, his longing. And in doing so, he processes it. He metabolizes his emotions instead of suppressing them. This emotional labor is invisible to the outside world, but it's profound. It's what allows him to emerge stronger, clearer, more whole. His home is not a retreat from reality. It's a space for healing, integration, and transformation. He doesn't fear solitude because he's learned that it's the most honest space for recovery. In solitude, there's no performance. There's only truth. And that truth, however uncomfortable, is the foundation of emotional maturity. He becomes his own sanctuary, a man who knows how to rebuild from within. 9. The inner dialogue. Inside the quiet walls of his home, there's a constant conversation, not with others, but with himself. This inner dialogue is rich, layered, and alive. He replays memories, analyzes decisions, dreams quietly of futures he doesn't announce. He confronts his contradictions, refines his beliefs, and deepens his understanding of who he is. This introspection is not narcissism. It's consciousness. Most people avoid silence because they fear what they'll hear, but he embraces it. He listens to the voice within, not the one shaped by society, but the one shaped by experience, reflection, and truth. His calm can feel intimidating to others because it reflects a level of self-awareness they haven't yet reached. He doesn't need constant updates, meaningless interactions, or endless motion to feel alive. He finds vitality in thought, in imagination, in emotional clarity. His solitude is not empty. It's full of insight. He's not disconnected. He's deeply connected to himself, to his values, to his purpose. This inner dialogue is his compass. It guides his choices, shapes his relationships, and informs his worldview. He doesn't speak often, but when he does, his words carry weight, because they come from a place of depth, not reaction. His silence is not absence. It's presence. It's the sound of a man who has made peace with his mind. And in that peace, he finds power. 10. A different kind of freedom. There's a quiet irony in how society perceives the man who chooses to stay home. To the outside world, he may appear confined, limited, even trapped. But in truth, he is freer than most. While others are tethered to the invisible chains of validation, likes, applause, social approval, he has broken free. His freedom is not about where he goes, but how he feels when he's there. He doesn't need to be seen to feel significant. He doesn't need to be praised to feel purposeful. His days are measured not by productivity metrics or social engagements, but by peace. He values time over attention, depth over display. And in doing so, he reclaims something most have lost, sovereignty over his own life. This man has opted out of the performance economy. He doesn't curate his life for others to consume. He doesn't chase trends, nor does he fear missing out. Instead, he's found contentment in the present moment. A quiet morning, a well-worn book, a familiar song. These are his luxuries. He is both the observer and the observed, the creator and the audience. He doesn't need to impress anyone because he's already impressed himself with his ability to live authentically. This kind of freedom is rare. It's not granted by society. It's claimed by the individual. And once claimed, it cannot be taken away. In his solitude, he is not alone. He is sovereign. And in that sovereignty, he finds a freedom that no external achievement could ever match. 11. Stillness is not wasted time. In a culture obsessed with hustle, stillness is often mistaken for stagnation. We're taught that to be still is to fall behind, to waste time, to miss out. But the man who stays home knows better. He understands that stillness is not the absence of movement. It's the presence of depth. It's the space where clarity emerges, where creativity is born, where insight takes root. History is filled with examples of brilliant minds who found their greatest revelations in solitude. Thinkers like Newton, Thoreau, and Nietzsche didn't discover truth in the noise of the crowd. They found it in the quiet of their rooms, in the long, uninterrupted stretches of thought that only solitude can provide. This man doesn't fear boredom. He embraces it. He knows that the mind, when left undistracted, begins to wander, and in that wandering, it discovers. He digests life slowly, filtering out the noise, extracting meaning from experience. This process is what psychologists call deep work, the ability to focus without distraction on cognitively demanding tasks. While others are busy reacting, he is reflecting. While others are chasing novelty, he is cultivating wisdom. His stillness is not passive. It's productive in the most profound sense. It's where ideas are born, where emotions are processed, where identity is forged. He may appear idle, but his mind is alive, building, connecting, evolving. In a world that equates motion with progress, he reminds us that sometimes the most important movement is the one that happens within. 12. The balance between comfort and avoidance. Solitude is powerful, but it's not without its risks. The same stillness that heals can also isolate. The same comfort that restores can, over time, become a cocoon that stifles growth. The man who loves staying home must remain vigilant. He must ask himself, am I choosing solitude to connect with myself or to hide from the world? This is the delicate balance he must maintain between engagement and retreat, between reflection and avoidance. Healthy solitude is active. It's intentional. It nurtures creativity, insight, and emotional resilience. Unhealthy solitude is passive, feeds fear, disconnection, and stagnation. The difference lies not in the behavior, but in the mindset behind it. This man understands that solitude is a tool, not a destination. It's a space for preparation, not permanent withdrawal. He uses his time alone to strengthen his inner world, but he doesn't forget the value of the outer one. He knows that even the deepest thinker needs experience, challenge, and connection to stay alive inside. He doesn't reject the world. He simply chooses when and how to engage with it. His solitude is a rhythm, a dance between stillness and movement, between silence and expression. He retreats to recharge, but he returns to contribute. This balance is not easy. It requires self-awareness, discipline, and courage. But when achieved, it creates a life that is both grounded and expansive, both peaceful and purposeful. 13. The home as autobiography. Over time, a man's home becomes more than a place to live. It becomes a story, not a story told in words, but in choices. The colors he surrounds himself with, the books he keeps, the art he hangs on the walls, each detail is a sentence in the autobiography of his soul. His home is not an escape from life. It's a reflection of how he chooses to live it. It's where he thinks, heals, creates, and recharges. It's where his truest self feels safe enough to exist without performance. The way he folds his clothes, the music he plays while cooking, the scent of his favorite candle. These are not trivial details. They are expressions of identity, of memory, of meaning. Psychologically, this personalization of space is deeply significant. It creates a sense of continuity, of coherence, of control. It allows him to externalize his inner world, to make the invisible visible. His home becomes a mirror, not of who he's supposed to be, but of who he truly is. And in that mirror, he sees not just his past, but his potential. He sees the man he's becoming. This kind of space doesn't happen by accident. It's curated over time with care and intention. It evolves as he evolves. And in that evolution, it becomes sacred. His home is not just where he lives. It's where he becomes. It's the stage for his quiet transformation, a transformation that may be invisible to the world, but undeniable to him. 14. The culture of distraction. We live in an age that fears silence. Every pause must be filled, every moment optimized, every thought interrupted by a notification. The modern world worships stimulation, fast content, endless scrolling, constant updates. In this environment, the man who chooses solitude becomes an anomaly. He's not resisting people. He's resisting pressure. He's not disconnected. He's discerning. Psychologists call this the stimulation paradox. The more stimulation society offers, the less tolerance people develop for quiet. But this man has rewired his mind. He doesn't crave the dopamine hit of attention. He finds satisfaction in subtler rewards, focus, peace, depth. He's not addicted to being seen. He's devoted to being present. While others chase visibility, he cultivates clarity. His solitude is not a rejection of life. It's a refinement of it. He filters out the meaningless, the performative, the shallow. He chooses what to engage with and, more importantly, what to ignore. This kind of discernment is rare. It requires emotional discipline, intellectual courage, and spiritual awareness. He doesn't fear missing out because he knows what he's missing isn't meaningful. He's not behind. He's ahead, living a future where presence replaces performance, where being replaces doing. In a culture that confuses noise with value, his silence becomes a statement. It says, I know who I am. I don't need the world to tell me. 15. The strength of self-containment. Self-containment is a psychological concept that describes the ability to derive emotional stability from within, rather than from external reinforcement. For most people, the self is porous, constantly influenced by others' moods, opinions, and expectations. But for the man who loves staying home, the self is fortified. His emotional landscape is not shaped by the weather outside, but by the architecture within. He doesn't need others to regulate his feelings. He knows how to sit with discomfort, how to process pain, how to cultivate joy, all without external input. This is not emotional detachment. It's emotional sovereignty. His inner world is textured, layered, and alive. He's full of thoughts, reflections, questions, and dreams. He doesn't depend on constant motion to feel alive. His life moves inward, through introspection, imagination, and emotional clarity. This kind of self-containment is rare because it demands silence, patience, and a strong inner narrative. It requires the ability to be alone without feeling empty. And that ability is a form of strength that most people never develop. He's not closed off. He's centered. He doesn't isolate himself out of fear. He chooses solitude out of wisdom. His emotional independence is not a wall. It's a foundation. It allows him to engage with the world from a place of wholeness, not need. And that wholeness is what makes his solitude powerful. 16. Why still men are feared. There's something unsettling about a man who doesn't chase attention. In a world built on performance, his stillness becomes a quiet accusation. He doesn't flaunt wealth, status, or busyness. He doesn't need to prove how important he is. And that challenges the very foundation of modern identity. People who are not at peace with themselves often project discomfort onto those who are. His calm becomes a mirror, reflecting the chaos others carry. His silence becomes a contrast, exposing the noise others depend on. He doesn't play the social game because he's already seen through it. And that makes him dangerous, not because he's aggressive, but because he's free. Society often labels such men as distant, strange, or emotionally cold. But these labels are defense mechanisms, ways to dismiss what we don't understand. The truth is, his detachment is not indifference. It's clarity. He's not disengaged. He's discerning. He doesn't chase crowds because he values authenticity over approval. He doesn't seek applause because he measures worth by alignment, not visibility. His strength is quiet, but it's unshakable. He doesn't need to dominate. He steadies. He doesn't need to impress. He embodies. And in doing so, he challenges the illusion that noise equals value. His stillness is not absence. His presence, the kind that makes others question their own direction. 17. The philosophy of solitude. To this man, solitude is not a retreat from life. It's an entry into it. Philosophers like Nietzsche, Pascal, and Emerson warned that humanity loses itself in distraction. Blaise Pascal once wrote, "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. The man who loves staying home has solved that problem. He can sit quietly. He can think. He can simply be. This ability is not trivial. It's the foundation of self-awareness. When you can spend time alone without discomfort, it means you've befriended your mind. You've faced its shadows, its noise, its endless questioning, and you've made peace with it." In a way, he represents a modern monk, not cloistered in religion, but devoted to the spiritual discipline of presence. His solitude is not empty. It's sacred. It's where he refines his philosophy, where he deepens his understanding, where he cultivates emotional clarity. He doesn't fear silence because he knows it's the space where truth emerges. He doesn't chase stimulation because he knows it's often a distraction from meaning. His solitude is not a pause between engagements. It's a practice, a way of living, a way of being. And in that being, he discovers something most people never find: peace without performance, clarity without chaos, strength without spectacle. 18. Solitude as strength. In the modern world, strength is often measured by how much one can endure, how loudly one can speak, how visibly one can dominate. But there's another kind of strength, quieter, deeper, and far more enduring. The man who chooses solitude has discovered this strength. He doesn't fight the world. He doesn't need to. His resilience comes not from resistance, but from restoration. He knows that true power lies in the ability to return to center, to recharge without external input, to find peace without needing to escape. His solitude is not a pause, it's a practice, a discipline, a way of building inner reserves that allow him to face the world with clarity and calm. Every moment he spends alone is another brick in the architecture of his mental fortitude. He's not hiding, he's constructing. He's building a foundation that can withstand the storms of life, not by bracing against them, but by becoming immovable from within. This kind of strength doesn't shout. It doesn't seek recognition. It simply is. It radiates from his presence, from the way he listens more than he speaks, from the way he responds instead of reacts. He teaches something profound without ever needing to explain it. That peace is not something you find outside. It's something you build inside. And once built, it becomes unshakable. His solitude is not a weakness to be fixed. It's a strength to be honored. 19. Masculinity reimagined. The man who stays home challenges the traditional script of masculinity. He doesn't fit the mold of the conqueror, the loud leader, the relentless provider. Instead, he embodies a new kind of masculine energy, one rooted in reflection, emotional intelligence, and inner strength. He doesn't roar. He radiates. He doesn't dominate. He steadies. His power comes not from how many people follow him, but from how deeply he knows himself. In his solitude, he's not shrinking. He's expanding into a fuller, more integrated version of manhood. One that honors vulnerability as much as courage, stillness as much as action, presence as much as performance. His home becomes his dojo, not of warfare, but of wisdom. It's where he trains his mind, sharpens his awareness, and cultivates emotional discipline. He learns patience by sitting with discomfort. He learns empathy by listening to his own pain. He learns strength by choosing peace over reaction. These qualities, once dismissed as soft or weak, now emerge as the foundation of evolved masculinity. He doesn't need to prove his worth. He knows it, and that knowing changes everything. It allows him to show up in the world not as a mask, but as a man whole, grounded, and unshaken by the noise around him. This is not a rejection of masculinity. It's a redefinition, a return to its essence, not as dominance but as depth. 20. The dual edge of comfort. Comfort is a beautiful thing until it becomes a cage. The man who loves staying home knows this truth intimately. He understands that the same walls that protect him can, over time, begin to confine him. That the same routines that ground him can become ruts. Solitude, while healing, can also become a hiding place. The key is awareness. He must constantly ask himself, am I choosing this because it nourishes me or because it shields me? Healthy solitude is active. It's a space for growth, reflection, and creativity. Unhealthy solitude is passive. It's a retreat from discomfort, a way to avoid the friction of life. The difference lies in intention. This man walks a fine line. He knows that even the most introspective soul needs the world, not for validation but for expansion. He doesn't reject connection. He simply curates it. He engages with life on his own terms, but he doesn't forget that life exists beyond his walls. He steps out when it matters. He contributes when it counts. His solitude is not a full stop. It's a comma, a pause that allows him to return stronger, clearer, more aligned. He understands that growth requires both roots and wings. His home gives him roots. The world gives him wings. And in balancing the two, he creates a life that is both stable and expansive, both grounded and alive. 21. What he represents. The man who loves staying home is not just a person. He's a symbol, a mirror, a message. He represents the human capacity for introspection in an age of distraction. He stands for the courage to step out of the current, to choose meaning over motion, to find value in presence rather than performance. When we look at him, we're not just seeing a man who enjoys his own space. We're seeing the archetype of self-awareness, a quiet counterpoint to the chaos of collective living. He reminds us that being alone can be an act of connection. Connection to the self, to peace, to authenticity. He doesn't need the world to tell him who he is. He already knows. His home is not a retreat from reality. It's the stage where he lives most truthfully. The walls around him do not confine him. They protect the sacred dialogue between his thoughts and his spirit. And through that dialogue, he becomes something the world rarely produces anymore, a whole man. A man at peace with his choices. A man unafraid of stillness. A man who doesn't need an audience to exist. In a time when everyone is running, he stands still. And somehow that makes him the only one truly moving.
Stay informed, stay balanced, and stay strong. Subscribe to Alpha Men Unmasked for more raw, faceless truths about men's health, masculinity, and mental strength. No filters, no fluff. Just facts.